Welcome in. It's Big Ten Today. On a Friday, we are presented by Gatorade, and we are delighted to have you with us. Dave Revson, Jerry DiNardo, Dave Wanstead. Another weekend is upon us. Friday night action tonight. Lots to get fired up about.
I think for the last 100 years that we've been doing this.
Let's not date ourselves.
It seems like we say this every year. Where's happened to the first half of the season?
I know.
All right? It's just,
it flies.
life's moving fast.
Yeah, halfway point, absolutely. And the games just seem to be getting better, right? I mean, there's more pressure now, more on the players, on the coaches. With that 12-team playoff, a lot more discussion, I think, than ever been before.
So, a lot more teams.
A lot more
Exactly.
teams.
Exactly.
18 in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
A lot more teams in the hunt. There are a lot more teams in the Big Ten. I mean, you make a good point. That was the story of week one.
And you know what? Everybody still kind of feels like they got a chance,
Yes.
you know, for the most part. Which
No,
is
a lot of
good.
teams are still in this discussion, including one that will play tonight. Let's dive into our big story, that battle in West Lafayette. The Ducks coming off the massive win over Ohio State, a game that saw them roll up nearly 500 yards of offense against what was the nation's #1 defense coming in. Purdue is fresh off its best performance of the year. They tallied 46 points and nearly 400 yards after halftime in an OT loss to Illinois, a game in which head coach Ryan Walters took over the offensive play calling duties. It gets us to our big stat presented by IHOP. Anyone who follows the Big Ten is well aware of Purdue's spoiler-maker history. 17 wins against AP top 5 teams when they themselves are unranked. That is 6 more than any other school in the country. They've won 2 of the last 3 such games at Ross-Ade. And Wani, Purdue found something offensively in that second half against Illinois with Ryan Brown, who was playing for the injured Hudson Card. Now the question is, can you carry it forward to this game against Oregon?
Yeah, obviously Devin Mockabee is going to be huge for Purdue in this game. And I think Purdue, what Ryan Walters, the challenge he has, I think he's got to take advantage. You know, Oregon's traveling a long way. Oregon's playing on a short week. Oregon's been patting themselves on the back, whether they admit it or not, all week long. And somehow Ryan Walters needs to get his team emotionally to come out of the locker room and take advantage of that somehow. So I think that's the biggest challenge because, hey, as well as the quarterback, Ryan Brown, played and kind of caught everybody by surprise, it's still going to come down to running the football, you know, taking the air out of the ball a little bit, not letting Oregon just go up and down the field on you and hit them in the mouth first. That's the challenge, you know?
You know, Ryan calling the plays is obviously an interesting, everyone's been talking about it all week. And the only thing I can figure, the biggest positive, other than they moved the ball fairly well, obviously, but I think Illinois' defense had something to do with that, is I think it's important for his players to see this is a problem, I'm going to solve it. So I think there's a psychology to what Ryan has done. Now, whether you can continue to do that, especially the way his defense is playing so poorly.
I think what, they're last or what?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to have to split himself in half and go in both rooms. I mean, seriously.
No doubt. They're on pace to be the worst scoring defense in school history. So, and that's the side of the ball where he has expertise. I am interested, just having both of you here, the notion of a defensive coach who has never called offensive plays in his career. Now, again, his background, certainly in high school, was a really good quarterback. He switched sides of the ball when he went to Colorado in terms of as a player. But the notion that a guy who has made his reputation on defense could all of a sudden call the offensive plays and do it as successfully as he did, how surprising is that?
Well, again, the success has a little bit to do with Illinois, right? Okay, but I don't think it's all that complicated. You have 24 first downs, by way of example, a game. The menu is not all that big on what you're going to do on 1st and 10. Now, the terminology, now with the communication, it certainly makes it easier. So I think as long as he has been in the offensive meetings for 2 years and paying attention to what's going on and watching tape with the offensive coaches, I don't think it's really all that big a deal. I could see myself, I came from the offensive side, I could see myself calling defenses if I wanted to start calling defenses. I would know enough about our defense. On 3rd and short on offense, you might have 3 plays you call. Right. I mean, the menu, when you break it down and distance, isn't all that much. If you can communicate what you want, now with the, as I said, with the communication system, it makes it easy. I don't think it's that extraordinary. I think it's extraordinary he tried to do it and did it. Right. But once he got into it, By the time game time came, I don't think it's a big deal.
And the biggest change now is compared to 25 or 30 years ago is the computer stuff. You know, everything now is charted for you, kind of like you're insinuating, Jerry, you know, from tendencies, field position, not just down and distance, but where are they at on the field? What are they doing at the 10-yard line coming out? What are they doing? So, I mean, you can really tighten this stuff down to simplify it more. It is different that it happens mid-season. I would say that, but we'll see if we'll see if he can score. How many scored in the second half? 40?
40-something.
See if he can score 40 in the second.
46 points after halftime. That includes the 6 they scored.
Okay, we'll see if we can do that again.
12 yards of play. Yeah,
see
it's
how
going to
that
be tough
works
against
this
the
week.
Ducks. I hear you. I get it. Although Illinois is a ranked team, I mean, Illinois is not a bad football team by any stretch. What about Oregon? You kind of hinted at this mentality, guys, that hey, you know, you said short week and long travel and all of that, Wani. Like, how big is all of that for Oregon here in terms of coming off a monumental win where everyone's telling them how well they played, and they did play really well? And now you go to Purdue and you're in a new league and you don't know as much about these teams, and maybe you don't know that this is a team with a reputation for beating top 5 teams. Like, how do you approach this if you're Dan Lanning?
I think the best thing that happened to Oregon is that Purdue came back and scored all those points in the second half. You know, right? Sure, they got something to talk about.
Great point. Right.
And I'll tell you what, the leadership, they got some real leaders on all levels of that Oregon team. And the guy, Dylan Gabriel, coach, I knew he was a very good player, but I never really watched him much when he was at Oklahoma before he transferred. This guy's a Heisman candidate. I mean, overnight, I thought the guy was fantastic. As good a quarterback play as I've seen all year long. So you got guys like that leading your team, is my point. They may start slow, but it ain't going to last long.
Yeah, I think most coaches have been put in this position at some point, right? Big win. Now, this is a short week. Now, there's good news about the short week, too, because they play Illinois and Michigan coming off that short week, which gives them an extra day. So you get to know your team. You get to watch practice. You know, you might have to have a meeting if they're flat during the week and all that. I think this is standard procedure. Anyone that's coached a team as good as Oregon probably, you know, and Dan was at Alabama, they've been through this scenario. This isn't new ground. Doesn't mean that you can't get upset. And I think the best point was what you made. The second half Purdue's second half last week is a very good thing for Oregon.
Yeah. So pop in the tape and show them, hey, this team against a top 25 team ran up and down the field.
And the history of Purdue, which these guys don't know, beating Ohio State, right, and all the upsets that they've had in Purdue. So I'm guessing Dan Lanning has mentioned some of those things.
You think? Maybe just casually in passing?
Like you said, I like the idea of this is a great week to cause a little bit of a crisis, right? A guy jumps off, does something crazy, and you make a big deal out of it, and just to kind of get their attention. So.
All right, so that's the story in that one, as they'll play tonight in West Lafayette. And then tomorrow, about 100 miles to the west of there, a really special game between Illinois and Michigan. We've been talking about this all week, but Illinois rededicating Memorial Stadium 100 years in one day after Red Grange christened it with one of the great individual performances of all time, scoring 4 touchdowns in the first 12 minutes of the Illini's win over a reigning national champion Michigan team that hadn't lost in nearly 3 years. Get the defending national champs again tomorrow, and you see the Illini wearing throwback uniforms to that era. The helmets are hand-painted to resemble the leather helmets of Grange's era, a uniform design process that started nearly 2 years ago, and they requested that the game be against Michigan. They requested with the Big Ten a while back, hey, could you schedule us on this day, 100 years and one day after that great Red Grange game, could you schedule us a home game, and could it be against Michigan? And lo and behold, they get the defending national champs, and yet they probably get them at a pretty good time. The one thing I would say here, Jerry, is Illinois struggled with its run D. And the one thing that Michigan has done well on offense is run the ball. So how big a challenge is that part of the matchup for the Illini?
I think it's a big challenge. You know, the expression, if you can't put a finger on a problem, it's still a problem. I mean, how do you explain Purdue's second half last week if you're Brett Bielema? I mean, you've got to get that fixed. I mean, 40 points in the second half. On the other hand, Michigan, slow start certainly, but maybe the best position they're in right now to beat a team like Illinois. They've finally settled the quarterback situation, right? Jack Tuttle is going to be the quarterback.
They settled it by default. I mean, it's not like they feel like, but he's 2 big turnovers late in the last game.
But I will say to you, of the 3 that have played, he looks like the answer. Okay, for this reason.
Okay.
Davis threw 6 picks in 3 games, right? Alex Orji's an option quarterback that they don't run the option with. So he's averaging 3.5. His longest run of the year is 15 yards. I mean, he was limited in the pass game, but they weren't running him in the run game. And then Tuttle is, 30, 35 years old. He's had a lot of he's an older guy. He's had a lot of experience. He's not that old. And so and they had the week off to build an offense around him. So I think this is the best Michigan's been since this season started. Now, I could be wrong. We'll find out tomorrow.
Yeah, the biggest thing that when I watch Michigan, what they have 8 turnovers all last year, and they got 13 so far. Yep. I mean, they never turned the ball over. When Tuttle got in there, gave the team a spark. I mean, I'm saying here they come, right? I mean, the guy looked darn good, and then his last couple possessions, he fumbles it once. Yeah. I think he throws an interception. Right. You can't do that. I mean, you've got to be a game manager. And that would be my message there. Hey, you're coming into this Illinois game. We're going to run the ball. We're going to give you some shots, but you manage the game. You don't need to take any chances whatsoever because Illinois, I'll tell you, Luke Altmaier, he's gotten better.
Absolutely.
Right? Hasn't he? I mean,
great.
He's been more accurate. He's getting the ball out, and he's making plays on his feet. I did not. The end of last week's game, some of the biggest plays they had on offense was him getting out of the pocket and making plays. You're going to have to contend with that from a defensive perspective with Michigan. I mean, any of these pressures that we want to bring with what's his name, Martindale. You better make sure you contain this kid because if he gets out of the pocket, he's got the capability of making big plays.
But going into the game, the weakest unit is this Illinois defense. If you look at
run
all
defense,
the matchups,
yeah,
right.
And all year they kind of been that way, don't you think? I mean, inconsistent,
Yeah, but 40-something points and a half is.
I mean, the good news is, right? You don't. I mean, until proven otherwise, I don't want to sit here and eat my words tomorrow, but until proven otherwise, you can load the box on Michigan, right? I mean, it's the least efficient passing offense in the Power 5. They have guys. Their wide receivers have combined for 280 receiving yards this year. There are 23 individual players.
That's hard to believe.
23 individual players in the Big Ten who have more receiving yards than all of Michigan's wide receiver room combined. So load the box, make Jack Tuttle beat you if you suggest maybe they have improved in that area. We'll see.
I think they're in the best position they've been at.
And they had a week to work. I mean, I totally understand your logic. I'm not in any way saying I don't agree with it. I'm just saying we still haven't seen evidence of some sort of overwhelming passing attack. It figures to be a great day in Champaign. A Big Ten tailgate is going to be there for it. Mike Hall, Tyvis Powell, and Howard Griffith making a special celebrity appearance. Live from Champaign, they'll get you set for that top 25 tilt, plus go in depth to preview every conference matchup. The fun begins at 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific, only on the Big Ten Network. And the Indiana off to a truly historic start. 6 straight wins, all by double-digit margins for the first time since '96. And yes, Jerry, that is 1896. Already bowl eligible and in the top dozen in the nation in both scoring offense and scoring defense. They have yet to trail all season heading into tomorrow's battle with Nebraska. Back with Coach DiNardo, Dave Wanstead. Guys, coming off a bye, both teams, how do we feel about the timing?
I think the timing's great. I think because they both played 6 games, but I think Indiana gets a little bit of advantage in the game plan for this reason. Tony White runs a 30 defense, covers the center, covers the 2 tackles. And as an offensive lineman or offensive line scheme, you'd rather have someone shaded because most of the time they're going to be in that gap. Once in a while, the defensive coordinator might move them, but it doesn't happen very often. So to give Coach Cignetti and his staff 2 weeks to get ready for this unusual defense, and then sometimes they go to Bear, which covers the center and the 2 guards, and that throws off all your blocking rules. So good time to rest both teams. Same time in the season. They both have played 6 games. A little bit of advantage. to have net prep to an unusual defense for Indiana.
And I kind of look at the other way. I mean, this is, let's look at with Nebraska coming in with Dylan Raiola, okay, a freshman quarterback who's had some success. He's coming. I mean, when he gets off the bus, there's pressure on him now. More pressure than the opening game, say. Sure. Every week it builds. And now he's got to get on the field, and he's going to show up and play against Indiana that is top 2 or 3 in almost every defensive category too. So and Nebraska's leading in most of them, but Indiana's right there behind them defensively. So he knows what he gets. I think this bye week, if I'm Matt Rule, our run offense, guys, is 13th in the Big Ten. We got to run the ball, and we got to help our freshman quarterback. If we put this kid in 3rd and long against this Indiana defense, that's at the top of most categories with sacks or in the top 2 or 3, we don't give our chance to win. So I think if there was a point of emphasis from Nebraska side, it would be the run game. What are we going to do to try to block these guys or run the ball?
I think matchup games, which this is what I would consider a matchup game, it comes down to quarterback play and coaching decisions. I love these decisions these two coaches will make. I mean, they are not afraid to be aggressive. I mean, Matt Rule will take chances. Signetti will take chances. I mean, there could be some big-time, big decisions by these coaches, and they'll make them.
I was talking to Mike Shanahan, who played for me at Pitt,
right.
Offensive coordinator there, and he says about being, because just what you're saying, they never stop. They're coming at you, coming at you. And he says, well, that I've been with Coach Signetti now 9 years, so he's been with them. So he's brought not only a lot of his players with him from George Madison, but he also brought these coaches. And man, these guys are on the same page. It's really impressive. It is.
I think Shanahan's a terrific play caller. As do I think Coach White on defense is a terrific play caller. There's a lot of drama in this one.
Strength against strength too. Yeah. To your point, I mean, Indiana is a very good defense, right? I mean, when you're in the top 12 in the nation in scoring defense, and you're saying, well, their offense is better, it really speaks to how good your offense is. But the real strength, I mean, I think the thing that has just been unstoppable has been the offense. And Nebraska, I mean, other than the Illinois game, they've held everyone to 10 points or fewer. They've been really good defensively. You do wonder, Jerry, about special teams, right? That is an area that Nebraska really has to work on. They've had the most kicks blocked of any team in the country and the most punts blocked of any team in the country. So got to figure something out there.
Yeah, so I might add special teams to my theory about
that's what I was saying. That's
point.
Kind of in the close game, right?
And the one guy that probably doesn't get enough credit, Curtis Roque, the quarterback, right, for Indiana.
I
mean, I didn't realize his numbers were as good as they were till we were doing our homework for the show here. I mean, 73, 2 interceptions and 16 touchdowns. I mean, this guy is. We talk about quarterback play. This kid is playing awful good. Transfer from where? Miami of Ohio?
Ohio University.
Ohio University.
And he's not a spring chicken either. I mean,
he's not 30.
He's just sitting back here.
He's eligible.
He's eligible. How old all these people are. And you get sensitive when we talk about age.
He does.
Jeez. Dave's older than me. This is good.
All right, that is the big noon game. We've got a good one at noon as well. Badgers and Wildcats both looking to build off good performances when they square off. In Evanston, it's Big Ten football tomorrow, noon Eastern, 9 Pacific, only on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. And both these teams are trending in the right direction. Badgers have been fabulous the last 2 games. The largest scoring margin in the nation in that stretch. Look at that, 47 to 6.5. That's pretty good. Wins over Purdue and Rutgers. Northwestern vastly improved offensively as they have split matchups with Indiana and Maryland. They beat the Terps handily a week ago today. We've talked, Jerry, a lot about Wisconsin and its offensive identity. I would almost say just this side of ad nauseum.
Yeah.
However, the last 2 weeks have been, to me, eye-opening, revealing, whatever you want to say. Have we gotten to the point now where we can stop obsessing about whether Wisconsin is on the right track offensively?
I stopped obsessing seriously before anyone else because I looked at their schedule.
You were an early obsessing stopper.
And they lost to USC and they lost to Alabama. And last week they ran for 309 and threw for 240. So what's changed about Wisconsin football once they get their running game going is the formation. It looks different. But the potential to be better than the historic offenses of Wisconsin is the pass game. And people have to understand, air raid is a philosophy of throwing the ball. It's not an offense. Their offense isn't air raid. That's a throw the ball. So now finally they're more balanced, and finally they're running the ball like all the Badger fans want to see them run. Now, it's going to get more difficult against some of the better teams, but the progress they've made in a year and a half going from an I formation to what they're doing now, I think it's extraordinary, the progress they've made.
Yeah, and I think, we use this word identity probably too much, but I think now this is kind of a Luke Fickell team. Being able to run the ball. My biggest concern was, would they be physical enough to run the ball? Well, they're proving that. And the quarterback play, for a young quarterback play, Phil Longo's doing a really good job, right? With Blaine Locke, he's putting up good numbers. He seems to be getting better. Whether he's the guy all the way through or not, who knows? But I don't know. Northwestern, I got to give them some loving. I mean, they are playing. David Braun, he's squeezing everything he can. I mean, when they have games like last week, their best players show up and play. And my hat's off to him for that. I mean, he is. In their defense, they're playing good situation defense in the red zone. When they have to make stops, they make stops. I mean, everybody's talking Wisconsin, but I don't think this will be an easy game. I think the defense is going to really step up for Northwestern and challenge them. I really do.
Yeah, we're not going to. I'll be shocked if we see the numbers that Wisconsin's given the last couple of weeks. I mean, this Northwestern's defense is going to play. I mean, they know what they're doing.
Outside of the Indiana game, they've been really good. They struggled in that game. They gave up scoring drives on 7 straight drives, gave up points to Indiana. But, I mean, they were fabulous causing the turnovers against Maryland. And it does seem like they're making some progress, at least in the pass game offensively. They still are struggling to run the ball. But
this has always been a good. Northwestern has.
Well, this is an incredible. I mean, I don't know if you watched yesterday, but we went through the series on this. So it's 17-16 since 1985, and Wisconsin has been favored in 32 of the 33 games. And it's 17-16, Wisconsin with a 1-game edge. 9-9 this century, and Wisconsin's been favored in every game.
You got to give the quarterback, Jack Lauscher, give him some credit, right? I mean, I didn't see that.
I didn't either. I was way off.
What do you have? 4 passes, Rever, over 25 yards or something.
Yeah, I thought they were going to go back to Mike Wright. I didn't think they should have ever taken him out, but they made the right decision. Jack's playing really well.
Need to figure out a way to move the ball in smaller chunks, right? I mean, 163 of your 283 yards are on 4 plays. Is that sustainable against a better defense? Who knows? But got them a nice win last week. And I disagree with that. Great stuff from you and Coach Meyer. So, Coach Wannstedt, what about the other side of this now? Ryan Day.
Yeah.
You're coming off a really tough loss. You've got a bye week. What do you focus on if you're Ohio State?
Well, you got to, if you're discouraged by maybe some things that happen in the game, that from a coaching perspective, play calling. I thought he gave up on the run a little bit too early. That's just my opinion. But as far as focusing and working on, I would go on defense. I would go with Jim Knowles. I was watching the game, and he's walking all the guys up in there, and they're dropping out, and who's coming. And when you do that stuff, my experience with it, when guys are moving around and stuff, sometimes you're just not putting your hand in the dirt like Oregon was doing. 4 down, and here they come, and they're playing the coverage behind it and mixing in some pressures. So I think Ohio State isn't coming up with the sacks, that I think they should. And you can't be afraid. I mean, they got the most as talented secondary as anybody in the country. You got to trust these guys to play some man, and I think you got to heat it up a little bit more. I really do. I would be working on that from a defensive perspective and get this defensive line, these front 7 guys, getting these guys going more aggressively.
Yeah, and the bye week helps them do that. I agree. I started with defense with the same way you did, Dave, about what they can improve on. 8 penalties for 70 yards. That's a lot of penalties. But at the end of the day, Ryan Day, the head coach, has to look at this big picture, right? Is this more of a motivator to win the rest of the games, or would a win have been maybe too easy or automatic. You know, Oregon's got the opposite, right? Now they think they're automatically maybe going to win the Big Ten and be a high seed. So Ryan, I think, has to find a way that he has to turn this thing into a good thing. And you can do that. I mean, it's pretty obvious that you could do that. This team has been talking about natty or bust, which I think is a terrible thing to do, except I thought it was good for this team.
Yeah.
So they convinced me that it was very motivating to have that attitude. Now, this is a little bit of a setback, but I think you can play into that mentality now. So I think there can be more good come from this than bad because, as you say, they got to fix their defense.
Right.
80 or 70 yards of penalties is too many.
Yep.
And, you know, obviously Will Howard learned a lot about the end of a game. You know, so you can build on this loss.
And plus the expanded conference, right?
And expanded playoff.
East, West, and expanded
absolutely.
playoff. All those things are still, you know, hanging out there. So, I mean, you know, yeah, there's a lot to build on, obviously, and we'll see how they handle it.
Indisputably, you can make the playoff with one loss. I mean, it's not even moderately disqualifying.
Right.
I think a team of their caliber, you'll be able to make it with two losses. So, to your guys' points, you learn some things from it. You try to reinforce the things you're not performing well in because you're to win a national championship, if that is your goal, which I think we all know it is. You're going to have to play teams of this caliber again. You may have to play this team again.
Yep.
And you see what it looks like next time around.
And one of the best things about off weeks is cut-ups. You know, where you're studying this play over and over. For our viewers that don't know maybe what a cut-up is, you watch the same play over and over and over again to say, you know, this is valuable. They're halfway through the season, and they can really identify some problems and fix it.
They got some tough games. Got some tough games coming up. They got Nebraska after the bye, and then they go to State College to take on Penn State. Yeah. So got to get it figured out.
Room for DeJean to work. Crowd can sense it. DeJean across midfield, breaks a tackle. DeJean down the sideline. Goodbye. Touchdown, Iowa. Swing it, Mosley. Good blocking, and he does get that happen. Oh, he loses the football at the end. Iowa jumps on it, and they give him the possession. Clock runs, 15 seconds left for Kim. Another long one, picked off. Undercut by Jamari Harris. And there's the nail in the coffin.
Iowa, a great rally to win last year in East Lansing, despite the fact they were outgained by more than 125 yards in that game. It's a new era, though, for Iowa football. You don't have to worry about the offense struggling as mightily as it did a year ago, at least in the run game, dramatically better. How do you see this one as they head to Spartan Stadium?
Well, Michigan State had 2 weeks to prepare. I mean, that could help them. But I think what Tim Lester has done with the offense is exactly what Kirk wanted. He didn't want the spread offense. He didn't want drastic changes. He wanted to be better in the pass game and continue the run game and continue to win with special teams. And Tim is really plugged in. Just recently, I think it looks like this is where they want to go offensively. A lot of pre-snap shifts and disguising things, some different formations. But then at the end of the day, when you look at their offensive line and Caleb Johnson, I mean, that's the strength. That's still the strength of their offense.
Yeah, and I think we all agree. I know Cade McNamara, you know, he struggled off and on, but he's still, maybe I'm just partial to the guy, but still, if you want to put 10 guys up there and stop our run game, this kid can still make some plays, I think, down the field in the passing game. So they do have that, and I think that'll show up more so as they go down the road with this kid, you know?
You know, I think it's interesting. When you look at how Kirk runs his program, I think portal quarterbacks are perfect. And Cade is the first one. And I'm not saying he's been perfect. He's had some injuries. But, you know, recruiting a high school quarterback to that offense when everyone else is recruiting high school quarterbacks to these more wide open attacks, I think lends itself to if Iowa gets the right quarterback, they're so strong on defense, they're so strong on special teams, they're so strong in the run game. There's an older, mature Rock at Indiana.
So
right?
your point is why a portal quarterback? Because you can see whether or not they would fit into what it is you're going to do.
What they're
And you could be the missing piece to having a lot of success, right? Just like Rock has done it at Indiana, you put him. You put someone like him in the Iowa situation because things aren't going to change on defense at Iowa. They're not going to change on the special teams. They're not going to change in the offensive line, and they shouldn't change.
Right.
But recruiting a highly recruited quarterback, running their
pro style offense, right? Give them a little credit.
Plus,
for that.
there's not that many high school coaches, high school quarterbacks running this offense.
Everyone's in shotgun spread.
Yeah.
That's what it is. The one place it has changed, not philosophically, but in results, at least a little bit, is they've given up more big plays in the pass game. And this is a Michigan State team that will take some shots downfield. They're coming off a bye. What do we think about Aiden Charles and company against that Iowa D?
They will. The biggest thing with me with Michigan State, which is not a Jonathan Smith type team. I mean, they shoot them. They find more ways to stop themselves, right? I mean, whether it's turnovers or penalties, they can't get they're very inconsistent with getting a 10-play drive and scoring points with it. You know, something happens, an interception, a fumble, a penalty to stop them. So that'll be the biggest challenge for them, I think, is coming in and playing a clean game. I mean, Johnson's going to say, guys, we can't turn the ball over. We can't, you know what I mean, we can't make a critical mistake. If we get an opportunity for an interception, we got to get it.
But he is committed to Aiden Childs. I mean, I think that bodes well for Michigan State. He's a talented kid.
No doubt.
And Jonathan Smith, he was a quarterback himself. Mike Riley mentored him. And Aiden Childs, you know, he'll get it eventually.
But to your point, Wani, 14 turnovers, most of the Big Ten. They're last in the Big Ten in red zone scoring percentage. Just a lot of those things, that adds up.
And look for Phil Parker to get a lot more aggressive, I think, this week with his defense against this young kid.
Well, what about USC and Maryland? We all know the story with the Trojans. 3 narrow losses by a combined total of 13 points. So I know you can make the argument, well, they're really close. The bottom line is USC. I think we all know enough about the tradition of this program to know that close doesn't really suffice. That being said, I know in watching them against Penn State, Wani, you are still impressed.
I'm hanging on. Maybe it's my Rose Bowl ring that I got. I'm making me do it. I'm just saying. But I thought that Lincoln Riley had a good plan. And I know we kind of have different. I mean, I thought he came out. You know, they ran the ball 44% of the time in the first half, which is the most that they've run the football all year long. Okay, so he was committed to doing that, which will help that young offensive line. He knew the matchup that Penn State has with their front seven, and he was trying to, I think, do the best he could to have success and not end up in 3rd and 10. You know, and then he had the screens and some quick things going. I used to go into my line coach when we were facing somebody. I'd say, hey, come up with some plays that we can run and we don't have to block anybody, you know, and get the ball out quick type of thing. I mean, it's a joke.
Yeah, he does it very well.
Yeah, but, you know, I'm trying to do that. And their defense, to me, still, they don't close. They can't close out a game, Jerry. They've had plenty of leads, and they just can't do it.
Yeah, the defense got off to a fast start. Coach Lynn's kind of they got to get back to that. But and we've talked about this off air. You know, I looked at the stats against Penn State and I took out the reverse for 75, and then there was another 20-yard run. And if you look at the stats there, they're averaging 2.9 per run. And I don't think that's enough. Not that I think you have to run it more than you throw it, but if you're not threatening the defense with a run, and your aspirations are to win the conference and win championships, I don't think it works. I don't think 2.9 is going to be a really
I would
good
agree
team.
with you on that.
And so to me, but I think that the screens are good. I think the defense has to get better.
Defense, you know, fourth quarter, right, Jerry? I mean, they had them down. They have teams down by 2 scores in the fourth quarter. And the defense against Penn State, they had 2 opportunities on 4th down to make stops.
Fleming made good plays, and Aller made good plays. I mean, again, sometimes the other team
give Penn
just
State
makes
credit.
a play.
I know. I'm trying to just keep them alive a little bit. You know?
Yeah, I hear you. What about this game against Maryland? A Maryland team that's really reeling. I mean, they were coming off a bye. Northwestern's on a short week. They're traveling out there, and Maryland just came out flat as a pancake.
You know, to me, this whole season is a lost opportunity for Maryland, right? There's no more West. They've lost to Michigan State.
More East.
No more East. They lost to Michigan State,
West
Northwestern. That's right. You know, they lost 3 matchup conference games. And this is Locke's 6th year. I mean, this was an opportunity for them to go where they wanted. And he's done things that no one else has done at Maryland. So he's had success. But they just don't look like they play with a lot of emotion. I'm not sure how tough they are. It doesn't look right to me.
No, I agree with you totally.
But I'll tell you what, if USC goes in there and averages 2.9 on the run, I think they'll lose the game. So that's one of the reasons I say this about USC.
So USC, not the only West Coast school that is heading east. We've got UCLA going to Rutgers. These are two teams that could really use a win. What are you watching in this one, Coach?
I'm watching to see if UCLA starts running that ball, Greg Schiano's coming off the sideline and make a tackle. I promise you this. 300 yards rushing against the Greg Schiano defense. I'm telling you,
I'll do it myself.
I'm baffled. He may. Don't just keep an eye on him on the sideline now, because that could happen this week.
That game last week with Greg's team was the most out of character Rutgers team.
That was very surprising.
Not in any win or any loss, they've never looked like that.
Right. And UCLA is getting better, don't you think?
Better. But I mean, who gave them this schedule? I mean, LSU, Indiana, Oregon, Penn State, Minnesota, and now you win a trip to Jersey, okay, where you fly from guys.
Well, the Sopranos are waiting for you.
It's a brutal schedule. Oh, by the way, they play Fresno State at the end of the year. I mean,
good. Welcome to the Big Ten.
And you watch them on tape; they're getting better. They really are.
I know.
I keep saying that.
Let me just say this: I'm not saying UCLA can't go out there and win the game. I absolutely think they can go win the game. But they will not run for 300 yards. That is not something that this UCLA team is capable of. The dramatic conclusion of our show coming up next. One thing that's not going on in the Big Ten this weekend is Penn State playing a football game. We talked a little bit about Ohio State, what they would do in their bye week. Coach Wanstead, I'll give you the first word here if you're James Franklin. What do you do with your bye week if you're Penn State?
Well, the only thing I see with these guys, I mean, awful impressive. They're the best second-half team in the country. I think nobody would argue that. But the first half, they need to start faster. I mean, they've been tied with Illinois. They've been behind a couple of times, and that could catch up with you. Now, I would look at it from a head coach's perspective and saying, is it because we're making mistakes? Is we having a penalty or something? Are we dropping a pass? Are we not focused coming out? Or is it the play calling? Are we too conservative? Or maybe it's too much new stuff, Jerry. You know what I mean? So I would look at the play calling and are we making mistakes? And somehow you got to clean that up and start faster.
2 new coordinators. Meet with each coordinator. Are you getting everything you want? Give me your reflections on the first half of the season. Give me it on defense. Give me it on offense. Make a cut up, right? Tom makes a cut up. Andy makes a cut up. Are they where they want to be? Perfect time of the year to fix any problems that we have. Meet with the players individually, build them up a little bit, and let's go get it.
And maybe figure out 7 different ways to incorporate Tyler Warren.
7 more.
Exactly.
7 more ways.
Don't fall into that trap, right? Yes.
It's been pretty good. They have a tough next couple weeks, too. They got Wisconsin and Ohio State.